you all are having a blessed day. It was beautiful today. It was in the mid to high 50s, but very, very windy. The chickens don't like the wind, so they didn't want to run about this afternoon.
Good.
We are here to start the mountain of quilt tops that I have. At last count, I think I have 23 quilt tops that need to be quilted. And I need to process them because I have no more room. I want to dump off a load at the chemo center, and so I'm trying to focus on those, or the smallest that I have, or the ones that I already have backings for. So you can see right behind me right here, that is the orange one is my hexagon quilt. It is a kaleidoscope quilt that I made out of, hello Mr. Dinky, he's trying to claw off my hand again. So that is a kaleidoscope quilt. It is made out of cave facet fabrics. And that's the one that I had mentioned in a previous video or two that was a disaster because the fabric was skewed on the loom and it did not print straight. So when you tried to match up all the repeats of the fabric, the final repeat refused to line up. It was way off. It was like 6 or 7 inches off. So I had to make a very small quilt. That is basically a small baby quilt. That's all I had fabric for. The one beneath it is this one here. This one is the adding machine tape quilt that we did. And the one that I'm going to start with today is this one here. This is our disappearing potato chip block quilt. This is the that I disappeared the potato chip blocks. I use spray basting because I can't get down on my knees and I don't have a big enough surface that's high enough for me to be able to pin baste or thread baste, and my hands are not strong enough to do the safety pin thing. So this is the first one that we're doing, and I have pieced the back. So I found a 2-yard cut of this. These are both vintage, so I had enough fabric if I inserted another piece. So what I did is I had a 2-yard cut that I sliced down the fold, and I pulled it apart, and I inserted about, I'm guessing maybe 10 inches or so of a second fabric. I had a yard of that, so I cut that in half and I sewed it together lengthwise. So that is the back for this quilt. I realized that it was losing its color very rapidly while I was trying to iron it and piece it. So what I ended up doing is throwing it in the washing machine with a color catcher, and now it is soft. It's not bleeding anymore, and we're going to do this one tonight. I'm going to be using my Bernina 770 Quilters Edition QE, and I'm going to be using a pair of these gloves, and I'll show you everything when we get over to the machine. I have a lot of difficulties machine quilting under a small area. It really puts a lot of stress on my neck and on my shoulders and on my hands, and that's why I only make smaller quilts. So you won't be seeing any king-size quilts coming out of this gal because I can't do it. And I have a Sew Steady acrylic table here on my sewing machine, on my Bernina, and unfortunately it is not the end-all be-all that they claim it to be, because when I'm trying to machine quilt, my quilts snag on the edge of the Sew Steady table, and it adds a lot of additional force and stress on my body, and I don't have a lot of stamina, so I have to be careful. I have only 3 quilts that I've gotten ready for quilting, and that's because I ran out of basting spray. I have to go out to the doctor's tomorrow, so I'll pick some more up, and that's as far as I've gotten. So I have a lot of large cuts from Sew Yeah, either a 5-yard cut or a 108 cut. So I'm going to have to make a lot of backings for the rest of the quilts. But you can see the pile behind me. it was starting to overwhelm me. Every time I look at the pile, I got very upset. On this one, I'm going to be quilting with my walking foot because of all the seams and all. There's a lot of bulk in this quilt, and I don't want a lot of puckers on the back. Oh, get. Mr. Dinky is causing trouble. So I'm not going to be doing any fancy quilting on this. It's basically going to be wavy lines, and let's get started. I am going to start in the middle of the quilt, but as you can see here, I haven't even started quilting yet, and it's already dragging and getting hung up. You can see it here. It gets hung up on the bottom of the table, and that is not good for me. I'm going to ask you, I found these on Amazon. They're called Richie or something like that, but they're too big for me. So my hand slides inside of them and I don't get as much grip as I need. So if you know where I can get a pair of these in size small or extra small, leave me a comment down below so I can get myself the right size. All right, so we're going to start in the middle of the quilt and go down the center seam, and for that I need my tweezers to pull up the bobbin thread. I'm using a blue variegated thread. I think it's 50 weight. I changed my bobbin thread to match. Okay, and I have my bobbin thread pulled up so we won't have any more thread nests on the back. See, the walking foot grabs onto the quilt and helps me, but it's like someone has tied a cinder block to it. You can see this? This is all bunching up underneath the table. It gets sucked under the table and it drags. That's why I need myself a sit-down quilting machine. I'm trying to find a used one, but so far, no luck. So I'm just going to go down this center line and then I'll start doing the wavy lines. It goes a little bit easier once you have a couple of lines in it. We'll start here in the center again and proceed to the other side. Just wraps underneath. I don't know why, but like magic, it just wraps underneath. This certainly will not have any AQS ribbons on it, that's for sure. But there's a lot of love that went into this, and it will keep somebody warm. And that is what matters. Don't get me wrong, I love quilt shows. I've won many awards with my quilts, but that's not the reason I'm doing this. And because of my health limitations, I really don't have many options, so. And I have one of those slicker mats, but that doesn't do anything for the problem with the edge. My husband and I thought maybe if I could get like a PVC pipe or some quarter round molding, and if I can get the quarter round molding and glue it under here, this whole thing will be round. So we're going to try that, and I will let you know if it works. Oh, heavens to Betsy. This is annoying. Okay, here we go. All right, so we are done going long ways, and now we are going to go the short way. And this has already been done, so we'll be doing here. And basically, I'm going to be doing wavy lines in the blocks. Okay, the quilt is all quilted, and I have gone through the fabric that I had left from the shirts that I made this quilt out of, and I really like this one. I needed a total of 216 inches of binding for the quilt, so I am going to sew all this together, and I should have more than enough. Sewing 1/4 inch seams here. Now I know that you can do it this way. I've not done that, and I'm not sure if it would make a difference. So I think what I'm going to do is stick with my tried and true method. Oh, this is a mess. I got this Lori Holt seam guide that has self-stickies on it, and it is sticking to absolutely every surface on my... I can't put it anywhere without it gumming things up. The stickies have basically melted. Okay, I'll be back when I'm done ironing. Okay, we are back. The last little bit of things that we got to do, and one of those includes putting on the binding. And while we are putting on the binding, I will be inserting one of my labels. I made these with sublimation ink, and it's just a digital version of a piece I've done in several different mediums. I've done them in acrylic paints, I've done them in oil paints, I've done them in paper tubes. Let me get my paper tube and I'll show it to you. So there is that piece. This is 16 inch by 20 inch, and it's on a canvas backing, and each one of these lines here is a paper tube that came out of a magazine or a catalog, and I painted them in whatever color I needed. You can see I even have some stained glass windows in the church, and this is a Van Gogh inspired representation of Ashe County. Rather than having the cypress trees over here, I have Christmas trees because Ashe County is the largest producer of Christmas trees in the country. So everywhere you go, you see mountains covered with Christmas trees. Then we have the churches, because everywhere you go, there is a beautiful church. And on many of the mountains, there are the 3 crosses. And of course, the beautiful mountains, the glorious, I just saw a beautiful sunset. Thank you, Jesus. It was so beautiful. And the farm fields. When I think of Ashe County, the only thing missing out of this was the New River. The New River is one of the oldest rivers in the world. It is up there with the Nile, and it is the only river in the U.S. that flows north. It's very small here because it starts here, but it goes all the way up to Ohio, and then it comes back down the Mississippi to the Gulf of Mexico. And it's the only river that flows north. So, and my creek feeds into it, and it's about a half a mile from me. I can walk down to the bridge and see it. Again, this one was paper tubes. I took catalog pages and I rolled them up into tubes that kind of look like straws, and then I've painted them in various different colors with different mediums. Then we have my label again, which is the church, the Christmas trees, the mountains, the crosses, and the beautiful sunrise. And then I have my information here on the back. So let me go put this away. Okay, so my label will get stitched in between the quilt and the binding. There's a raw edge here that will get caught in the seam, and I've just done a very narrow hem here and sewn them down. And this will go on the left side of the quilt so that this shows up. If I put it on the right side, my information will show up here. So I want this to show up on top, so I'll put it on the left side. And I have probably 250 inches of binding. I have it folded in half and pressed, and I do the binding by machine. Try not to do too much handwork anymore if I can avoid it. I'm going to start raw edge to raw edge on the back, and I'm going to be leaving a tail, I don't know, maybe 8 inches, 10 inches, that I will use to connect it at when I get to the other side here. Okay, I'm going to go to about 1/4 of an inch from the edge. And I'm going to cut and rotate the quilt. All right, now I am going to fold this up at a 45-degree angle from the corner, a little bit more like that. And it kind of lines up with this point right here. And then I'm going to fold it down on top of itself so it's level with the edge of the quilt. Okay. And slide it up under here. And I'll start here and I'll go backwards for a few stitches. Okay, again, I'm going to sew to about 1/4 of an inch away from the corner. So once again, I'm going to trim this little excess batting that's poking out here. Get that out of the way. And now we're off to the races on this side. And I'm just keeping my eyes on the edge to make sure that the backing, the batting, and border are getting caught. It's fiddly, but it can be done. Just take your time, especially if you have problems like I do with your spine and your neck and your shoulders. Just, if you can only do a foot at a time, then that's all you can do. Take breaks, stretch, get up. Okay, get to 1/4 of an inch and stop. Slide it under. And now I'm going to take this and I am going to insert it maybe right about here. Okay, again, making sure everything is where it's supposed to be. So here is the label. And it gives them just enough information so that they know who made the quilt should they want to reach out. Now I am going to fold this back so, and I'm actually gonna cut this at this seam here, and I am going to fold this in like so and give it a bit of a finger press. And now I'm going to tuck this in. And there is our finished binding. There we go. Okay, the back of the binding is done, and now what I do is I fold it over to the front and sew it down. And this will go over beyond the 1/4 inch on the back, so you won't see that stitching. Okay, let me see if I can get you in closer. You can see the 1/4 inch seam that I used on the back, and when I fold this over like this, it will cover that, so you won't see it. Okay? And if you'd like, you can do a fancy stitch on this. And I'm keeping my eye out for my label that's coming up. And I can offer you a wee bit of a tip on this. This can work better for you because it really pushes down on this, where this has very little meat on the actual binding. So let's take this off and let's change to the zipper foot. Let me quickly change my plate. That would be a sad thing. Sorry. Okay. The zipper foot. Okay, now I gotta change my, what number? That's a 4D. Okay, and now I'm gonna move my needle over. So you can See, that goes just to the left. And that means that the whole foot will be squished down on top of this binding, and it will really hold onto it nicely. So let's try this. So now you can see that it's being squished down by the foot, and it's not going to go anywhere. Because there's a hump here where the line of stitching from the back is. I find that the zipper foot does a better job. And I'll show you what I do when I get to my label here in a second. Alright, so what I'm going to do with this is I'm going to fold this out away from the quilt so it doesn't get sewn down in an awkward place here. And then I'll show you what we do when we get to the corner. Alright, so the first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to fold this down at an angle, okay, and then I'm going to pull out the excess here and fold it up, and it'll make a nice mitered corner. And if you need help, you can use a stiletto, you can use a seam ripper, you can use whatever you like. And now you really do not have to cut, tie off, and pivot. You can just lift up the foot and rotate the quilt, and you are off to the races again. And you can see how nicely this is catching right along the edge. I think it makes a nice finish. You have to keep your wits about you while you're doing this, so you don't have it slide off, because there is a tilt when you take into account the bulk of the seams, the pinching of the back stitching. So you want to make sure that your foot is always riding on the edge, but not off the edge. And that's kind of thick there. So you just help it out a little bit. This is going to be bulky. I might even have to hand crank this. There is a lot of bulk here. Come on. There we go. As much as I love my vintage machines, there are some things that I don't think I'd want to put them through, and this is one of them. So I just kind of squish it down like this and get a 45-degree angle, and then roll it to the front and let it overlap. I hope you can see this. Let's see if I can't zoom you in. Take it. I stick my finger down here to roll this down, and I squish that. Squish it with your fingernail or a seam ripper or whatever else you might have handy. And there. Now you can see that it's a 45 and everything meets. So the only challenge is getting it under the needle in the same position. Just go slow, and you can back up a couple stitches forward. There you go. Rotate. And now you just carry on. This would be a good time to be an octopus. Okay, we're done. Okay, here we are, YouTube. Here is our first quilt, and I think it looks nice. The back doesn't look bad. There's no puckers, there's no oopsies. Everything is quilted down nicely and evenly. And we have our nice binding, and this doesn't bother me. This line that you see here is from where we sewed the top of the binding on. That doesn't bother me. It just looks like a line of quilting, which is what it is technically. So, okay, and here is my quilt label that you can see here with my information on it, and it tucks away nicely. And this is most certainly large enough to keep somebody in the chemo recliners nice and covered. Even my feet are covered. So you can get full coverage out of this. Let's see what the size of it is. The final size of this charity quilt is 47.5 inches wide by 58 inches long. And I like the pattern. I really enjoyed cutting up or disappearing the potato chip block. And I think it's something that I would try again too. But that will be it for this video. And as always, I want to thank you all so very much for coming along with me on this journey and for checking out my silly little videos and all your subscriptions and your comments and your likes. Your comments just make my day. They fill me with joy. Y'all are just the sweetest people on the face of the earth, and I so enjoy, I have goosebumps right now. I so enjoy reading all of your comments, and it really brightens my day. It makes my day. So thank you ever so much for doing that. I hope that you have a very, very blessed evening and weekend. And thank you all so much for watching. Until I'm back with my next project, I will see you right back here at 70 Acre Studio real soon. Thanks so much for watching. Take care of yourselves. God bless.
Good night, Elizabeth.
Good night, John Boy.